Most people live their lives in a state of unconscious reaction. They wake up in the morning, follow the same routine, think the same thoughts, feel the same emotions, and repeat the same behaviors day after day. They operate on autopilot. And when something disrupts that pattern, an argument, a triggering word, a difficult person, they react without thinking. This reaction feels immediate, justified, and even necessary, but in truth, it is simply a program running itself. It is the body remembering the past and reliving it in the present. In neuroscience, we understand that over 90% of the thoughts we think today are the same thoughts we thought yesterday, and those thoughts are connected to the emotions we've memorized over time. So if our thoughts are connected to our feelings, and our feelings are connected to our behaviors, then by the time a person is in their mid-30s, they've become a set of memorized emotional responses. They're no longer responding to life, they're reacting from memory. And until they become conscious of those patterns, they are destined to repeat them. Awareness is what begins to break the cycle. When you become aware that you're reacting, when you can observe your emotional state without immediately identifying with it, that's the moment you step into power. That moment of observation creates space. And in that space, you are no longer the reaction, you are the awareness behind it, you are the witness. This is the first step toward emotional freedom. It's the moment when you no longer let a past version of yourself dictate your present. The brain is a record of the past. The body is the unconscious mind. So when you feel a surge of anger, frustration, or fear, your body is actually remembering something. It's producing a chemical cocktail that's familiar, even addictive. That chemical signal travels through your nervous system, triggering your heart, your gut, your breath. You don't have to think your way into a reaction. Your body already knows it, and if you don't intervene with awareness, the program runs without interruption. That's why most people say things like, I just snapped, or I don't know what came over me. What came over them was a memorized state of being. But once you train yourself to see the emotion as it arises, before it hijacks you, you interrupt the pattern, you become conscious of the unconscious. And in that awareness, you create choice. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending to be calm. It's about noticing the emotion as energy in motion without being swept away by it. Every time you become aware of a habitual emotional reaction and choose not to act on it, you are pruning away the neural circuits that support that pattern. You are quite literally changing your brain. You are weakening the pathways that keep you locked in cycles of reaction. And the more you practice this awareness, the more you recondition your body to a new mind. That's how emotional intelligence is built. Not by avoiding emotions, but by witnessing them, understanding them, and learning to move through them with intention. This is the essence of self-regulation. When you recognize a trigger and take a breath instead of lashing out, you're teaching your body that it's safe to pause. You're signaling to your nervous system that a new way is possible. That breath, that pause, it's not small. It's the start of transformation. Because you are no longer being run by the past. You are choosing your response. You are stepping into the role of creator. The more aware you become, the more sensitive you are to the subtle shifts in your internal state. You begin to feel the tension before it becomes anger. You sense the contraction before the fear spirals. You notice the judgment before it turns into criticism. This awareness allows you to intervene earlier and earlier in the process until eventually you are no longer reacting. You are simply observing, learning, evolving. Awareness is not something outside of you that you have to earn or achieve. It's already within you. It's your natural state, covered over by years of conditioning. The work is to return to that state, not just once, but again and again, until it becomes your new baseline. Until awareness is your default and reactivity becomes the exception. This is how change happens, not through force or willpower, but through conscious, consistent attention to your inner world, of course. Here's an expanded version of Keynote 2. Your triggers are teachers, not enemies. Written in a thoughtful, introspective, and transformative tone similar to Dr. Joe Dispenza's style. Every person carries within them a blueprint of their emotional past. That blueprint is made up of experiences, memories, beliefs, and the meaning they've given to everything that has ever happened to them. These impressions are stored not only in the brain, but also in the body. They live as patterns of thought, patterns of behavior, and patterns of emotional reactivity. And what we often refer to as triggers are simply reflections of those stored patterns being activated. But rather than seeing them as problems to avoid, what if we saw them as portals to deeper understanding? A trigger is not the enemy. It is an invitation. It's a signal from the unconscious mind that there's something unresolved, something unhealed, something still waiting to be seen. When a person or situation evokes a strong emotional charge in you, it's rarely about the surface level event. It's almost always about the meaning your mind has assigned to it, often long before the current moment ever arrived. That's why one person can feel rage in a moment where another feels peace. It's not the moment, it's the memory. In that way, every trigger holds within it an opportunity to bring something from the unconscious into the light of awareness. But the conditioned mind often resists this. It wants to blame the outside world. It wants to protect the familiar self. So we say things like, they made me feel this way, or that situation ruined my day. But what we're really saying is, something in me got activated and I don't yet know how to face it. When we shift from blame to curiosity, we begin to reclaim our power. Imagine this. Every emotional trigger is like a spotlight shining on a wound you've forgotten you had. You may have buried it, you may have learned to cope with it, but the body remembers, the nervous system remembers, the subconscious remembers, and the world around you in its perfect orchestration mirrors back exactly what needs to be addressed so that healing can begin. This is not punishment. This is precision. The universe is not chaotic. It is intelligent, and it brings into your field exactly what you need to see again and again until you finally see it. When you become conscious of your triggers, you start to see them as feedback. You start to realize they are not random. You start to notice patterns. The same kinds of people, the same emotional themes, the same responses in your body. And instead of saying, why does this keep happening to me? You begin to ask, what is this here to teach me? That question is the opening. That shift in perception is where transformation begins. Because now, instead of being a victim of the moment, you are a student of your own mind. The emotions that arise in response to a trigger are not wrong. They are simply energy that wants to move, energy that wants to be understood. If you suppress it, it gets stored. If you react to it, it gets reinforced. But if you observe it, feel it fully, and inquire into its origin, it begins to dissolve. This is the essence of inner work, not to fix yourself, but to understand yourself so deeply that you no longer react from the wounded parts of you, you respond from the conscious parts of you. The mind may try to convince you that being triggered is a setback, that it means you haven't grown, that it proves you're still broken. But the opposite is true. Being triggered means something has come up for healing. It means the surface of your life is cracking just enough to let something new come through. Every time you sit with the discomfort instead of projecting it outward, you are creating new neural pathways. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, you are wiring your brain for emotional resilience. And that's the real gift. The trigger itself is not the growth. The choice you make in response to it is. You can shut down, lash out, numb, or escape. Or you can pause, breathe, and look within. In that pause, you open the space to shift. In that moment, you move from living in the past to creating a new future. And over time, the triggers that once destabilized you become reminders of how far you've come. They become teachers of your emotional evolution, showing you where you still hold pain and where you've begun to find freedom. Of course, here's an expanded version of Keynote 3. Pause is power. Respond don't react. Written in a calm, insightful, and transformative tone, staying true to the energy and depth of Dr. Joe Dispenza's approach. In a world that moves fast, where conversations unfold in rapid texts, where pressure builds in the space of seconds, and where we're constantly wired to respond, reactiveness has become the norm. We are conditioned to be immediate, decisive, emotional, and often impulsive. But what if true power doesn't live in the reaction, it lives in the pause? That sacred silent space between what happens to us and what we choose to do with it. That is where we begin to take our life off autopilot and put it into our own conscious hands. Most people are not responding to the present moment. They are reacting from their past. Their reactions are reflexes born from years of accumulated emotional memory. Someone says something that reminds them of being criticized as a child, and the body tenses before the mind can catch up. A glance, a tone of voice, a delay in reply, it all ignites the subconscious mind, pulling stored emotions to the surface in the form of quick, defensive, or aggressive behavior. The body remembers, and it moves before thought can intervene. But there's a different way of being, one that begins with awareness and cultivates choice. The power of the pause is that it interrupts the unconscious pattern. It's a micro moment of stillness that opens the doorway to consciousness. In that moment, the body may still be flooded with sensation, the heat of anger, the tightening of anxiety, the wave of sadness. But if you can remain present enough to pause, you no longer let that emotion control the outcome. You step into the space where wisdom can emerge. In neuroscience, we understand that the emotional brain reacts faster than the rational brain. The limbic system fires before the neocortex has a chance to evaluate, reflect, or interpret. That's why reactions often feel immediate, like they're happening to you. But when you train yourself to pause, whether it's through breath, grounding, or simple awareness, you give the thinking brain a chance to catch up. You make space for a new neurological path to be chosen instead of defaulting to the old one. This pause is not passive. It's not avoidance. It is deeply intentional. It's a reclaiming of authorship over your inner world. When you pause, you allow the body to catch up to the present. You disrupt the chemical cascade that's been associated with your emotional triggers. You move out of survival mode and into creation mode. It's not about denying emotion. It's about not being ruled by it. Emotions are powerful messengers, but they are not always trustworthy guides in moments of stress. The pause allows you to feel the emotion without becoming the emotion. It's in the pause that clarity arrives. In that space, you get to ask yourself, what am I really feeling? What story am I telling myself about this moment? Is it even true? Am I responding to what's happening now or to what has happened before? These questions may only take seconds to consider, but they can change the entire trajectory of a conversation, a decision, a relationship. The ability to pause is the ability to stay connected to your higher self, rather than collapsing into your conditioned self. Training yourself to pause takes practice. The nervous system doesn't shift overnight. If your default has always been to react, lash out, shut down, explain, defend, it may feel unnatural at first to do nothing, to wait, to breathe. But every time you choose to pause, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching your body that it's safe to be still, that you don't have to protect yourself through reaction, that presence is more powerful than control. The pause also creates space for empathy. When you're not consumed by your own reactive state, you can begin to see the other person more clearly. You can listen differently. You can respond in a way that aligns with your values, not just your emotions. The pause gives rise to emotional intelligence. It allows you to see the whole picture, not just the part that pokes your pain. There is something sacred about the moment before the response. It's the space where you stop giving energy to old patterns. It's the place where you meet yourself before you meet the world. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, that pause expands. What once felt like a split-second reaction becomes a moment of deep stillness, a breath that grounds you, a second that saves you from saying something you can't take back. That space becomes your power, not because it removes the emotion, but because it transforms your relationship with it. Most people go through life believing that what they feel is who they are, that if they feel sad, they must be sadness. If they feel angry, they must be an angry person. If fear arises, then they are fearful, broken, unstable. But this belief is not only untrue, it is disempowering. Emotions are experiences, not identities. They are energy moving through the body, not definitions of the self. The deeper truth is this: you are not your emotion. You are the awareness behind them. You are the one who observes the storm, not the storm itself. When an emotion arises, whether it's joy or grief, rage or love, it comes with a cascade of sensations. The body tightens or softens. The breath shortens or expands. The heart races or slows. And the mind, conditioned by the past, begins to tell stories about what's happening. We interpret the emotion, give it meaning, and then we attach. We say, this is me, this is who I am right now. But in doing so, we collapse our identity into a temporary state. We forget that the emotion is simply passing through. The mind loves identification. It wants something to hold on to. And emotions are powerful because they are felt so deeply. They pull attention inward. They color perception. They make everything feel urgent and personal. But just because something is intense doesn't mean it's permanent. Just because it's loud doesn't mean it's true. Emotions are like waves. They rise, they crest, they fall. The problem is not the wave. The problem is forgetting you are the ocean. In neuroscience, we know that emotions are chemical signatures released in the brain and body. They last anywhere from 90 seconds to a few minutes, unless the mind continues to feed them through thought. The average emotional experience is brief, but when we ruminate, replay the story, argue with reality, or resist what we're feeling, we keep the emotion alive. We sustain it with attention. We extend its life far beyond its natural rhythm. And we do this often without even realizing it. There is great power in learning to observe your emotional states without immediately identifying with them. This doesn't mean ignoring or bypassing your feelings. It means creating a space between the feeling and the story. It means being able to say, I notice that sadness is present, instead of saying, I am sad. One recognizes the experience, the other becomes consumed by it. Observation is the beginning of liberation. The moment you become aware of an emotion, you are no longer fully inside of it. You've stepped into consciousness. And from that space, you can begin to ask deeper questions. Where is this coming from? Is this emotion truly about what's happening now, or is it a memory resurfacing? Is this mine, or have I absorbed it from someone else? What belief is this emotion trying to protect or reinforce? These questions don't immediately fix the feeling, but they create space around it. They slow down the process. They bring in light where there was once only automatic reaction. Over time, this practice builds emotional mastery, not control in the rigid sense, but mastery in the sense of understanding. You start to become familiar with your own inner landscape. You recognize the early signs of anxiety before it becomes panic. You sense the rise of anger before it turns into an explosion. You feel the grief in your chest without drowning in it. You learn to sit with discomfort without letting it define you. That's the power of the observer. It doesn't resist what is felt, but it doesn't become it either. You are the one watching, the one who can feel deeply yet remain grounded, the one who can experience emotion yet not be ruled by it. The more you cultivate that witness inside of you, the less reactive you become, not because you've numbed yourself, but because you've expanded your awareness beyond the emotion itself. You've realized that what you feel is real, but it is not all of you. You can hold space for anger and still choose compassion. You can acknowledge fear and still take action. You can allow sadness and still move forward with grace. This shift in perception changes everything. Life doesn't stop being emotional. People still challenge you. Unexpected things still happen, but you meet these experiences from a different place. Not from identification, but from presence. Not from reaction, but from awareness. The emotion no longer controls the narrative, you do. You've remembered who you really are, not the chaos of passing emotions, but the stillness that watches it all unfold. Certainly, there's an expanded version of Keynote 5, Rewire Your Brain by Changing Your Response, in the reflective, empowering tone inspired by Dr. Joe Despenza's teachings. Every response you give to life is like a vote for the type of person you are becoming. The way you respond to stress, to conflict, to disappointment, to fear, it all gets recorded in your brain and body. These responses are not isolated events. They become patterns. And the more often a pattern is repeated, the more hardwired it becomes. The brain is not fixed. It is plastic, adaptable, ever-changing. This is one of the most liberating truths in neuroscience. Your reactions are not your destiny. They are learned, which means they can be unlearned. They are wired, which means they can be rewired. Every thought you think and every emotion you feel sends a chemical signal throughout your body. When that signal is repeated enough times, it begins to define how your brain is structured and how your body responds automatically. This is how your personal reality gets built, through repetition of internal states. So if you always respond to challenge with anger, your brain builds faster, stronger connections in that direction. If you consistently respond to uncertainty with anxiety, your body becomes conditioned to feel it even in neutral situations. Over time, your response becomes reflexive. You don't even think, you just react. But what if, in the moment when your old wiring wants to take over, you choose something different? What if you interrupt the familiar pattern and respond in a new way? The moment you do this, you signal to your brain that change is happening. You introduce uncertainty, which means possibility. That new response might feel uncomfortable, even unnatural at first, because it doesn't match the known self. But that's exactly how new wiring begins. The unfamiliar is the gateway to transformation. Your brain doesn't change through information alone. It changes through experience. You can intellectually understand that patience is better than anger, or that calm is better than panic, but until you embody that in a moment where your nervous system is triggered, the change hasn't been integrated. The key is not knowing what the right response is, it's practicing it in real time. So when you're in the fire, when you feel the urge to explode or shut down or run away, and you choose to pause, to breathe, to respond with intention, that's when the rewiring begins. You are choosing a new pathway. You are laying down a new connection in your neural network. The brain learns through contrast. When you do something different than what it expects, it pays attention. And the more you repeat that new response, the stronger it becomes. The first time it might feel forced. The second time it might still be awkward. But over time, that new response becomes the new normal. You've carved out a new lane in your internal circuitry. This is neuroplasticity in action, not just as a theory, but as a living, breathing experience. Your body also needs to be involved in the change. The body stores emotional memory. It knows how to clench in fear, tighten in stress, shut down in sadness. When you change your response, you also change the way energy moves through your body. You are signaling safety where there used to be danger. You are inviting regulation where there used to be chaos. The body doesn't forget easily, but it does respond to consistency. The more often you pair a calm mind with a calm body in moments of stress, the more the body begins to trust the new pattern. You are not just managing your emotions in those moments, you are literally altering your physiology. You are shifting your biochemistry. The brain and body are having a new conversation. One that says, I am no longer living in the past. I am no longer at the mercy of old reactions. I am choosing my future, one response at a time. The more you do this, the more coherent your system becomes. Thoughts and emotions begin to align. Reactions become responses. The inner world begins to feel more spacious, more centered, more grounded in awareness rather than habit. It doesn't happen all at once. Rewiring the brain is a process, not an event. It requires intention, presence, and practice. It requires catching yourself in the moment and choosing differently even when the old self wants to run the show. But each time you succeed, you strengthen the new circuitry. Each time you respond with awareness, you reclaim your power. You are not just reacting from the old program, you are writing a new one. You are becoming the architect of your internal experience, shaping a mind that serves your highest self rather than repeating a history that no longer fits. Certainly, here's an expanded version of Keynote 6. Mastering emotional navigation is mastering your future, written in the deep, transformative tone inspired by Dr. Joe Despenza's style. The quality of your life is not determined solely by what happens to you, but by how you interpret it, how you respond to it, and most of all, how you manage the emotional energy it generates. In every moment, you are either being pulled by the familiar gravity of your past emotional patterns, or you are consciously choosing how you want to feel, who you want to be, and what direction you want to take your life in. Emotional mastery is not about suppressing or avoiding what you feel. It is about learning how to navigate your inner world with awareness and authority, because the way you relate to your emotions will always shape the trajectory of your future. When you don't know how to navigate your emotions, you become a passenger in your own life. You get thrown by every wave, every trigger, every shift in the external environment. You become reactive, anxious, disconnected, not because the world is chaotic, but because you haven't yet learned to find stillness within yourself. You think you're responding to life, but in truth, you're responding to old emotions, old programs, old beliefs. And as long as you continue to respond from those same internal patterns, you keep creating the same outcomes. Different faces, different situations, but the same emotional loops playing out again and again. Emotions are not just fleeting feelings. They are frequencies. They are signals. They are carriers of information, telling you what's unresolved, what matters to you, what needs to be healed or heard. When you ignore them, they don't disappear. They amplify. When you suppress them, they get stored in the body. When you identify with them, they become part of your identity. But when you observe them, learn from them, and choose how to move through them, you gain access to an entirely different level of power, a level where your emotions serve your growth instead of sabotaging your progress. The most successful, fulfilled, and aligned people in the world are not those who never feel fear, anger, or sadness. They are those who've learned how to feel those emotions without becoming them. They have trained their nervous systems to stay grounded when things get difficult. They have practiced staying present in discomfort without fleeing into distraction, aggression, or despair. That ability to stay centered when everything inside of you wants to run or react, that is emotional intelligence. And it is a skill that can be learned, cultivated, and strengthened over time. Your future is not something waiting for you out there. It's something you're building from the inside out. Every emotionally intelligent decision you make is a brick in the foundation of that future. Every moment you choose presence over reaction, curiosity over judgment, compassion over defensiveness, you are stepping into alignment with your higher self. The self that isn't governed by wounds or fears, but by vision and wisdom. That version of you already exists, but you must train your emotional system to match the frequency of that future self if you want to become it. The subconscious mind, the body, and the heart are all part of this journey. It's not enough to think differently. You must feel differently too. You must teach your body how to live in elevated emotional states, even when the external world hasn't yet changed. That means practicing calm in the middle of uncertainty, practicing gratitude when you're still waiting for the breakthrough, practicing forgiveness when it feels easier to blame. These acts are not just emotional. They are neurological, chemical, energetic. They are how you begin to align your inner world with the future you want to experience. When you develop emotional navigation, you also develop resilience. You stop needing the outside world to be perfect in order to feel peace. You become less attached to outcomes, less controlled by fear, less dependent on validation. You start making decisions from clarity, not from chaos. You begin to trust yourself, not because everything feels easy, but because you've learned how to remain steady in the midst of difficulty. That inner steadiness becomes your superpower. It's what allows you to keep going when others quit, to respond with vision instead of panic, to create from a place of coherence rather than confusion. This work is not always comfortable, but it is liberating. Because the truth is, the more emotional mastery you develop, the more freedom you experience. Freedom from old pain, freedom from unconscious reactivity, freedom from the patterns that once ran your life. You are no longer at the mercy of emotion. You are in relationship with it. You listen to it, learn from it, and then lead yourself through it with grace. That is how you stop repeating the past. That is how you begin creating a future that reflects who you really are. That is how you become the conscious creator of your life.